Y'all hear me okay? Yep. All right. Howdy. My name's David Yates. I'm the board president for Hill Country Alliance. I want to thank you all for being here today. As I came in, every year the parking lot gets a little bit more and more full, and that hike in up here gets a little bit longer, but I'm very thankful for that. I'm also thankful that it's not 120 degrees outside, so thank you all for making the time to join us. I want to recognize, probably to her dismay, a special guest, Representative Vicki Goodwin slipped in. Thank you very much. We're just outside of her district here. Thank you for your service and your focus on conservation. You've been a wonderful ally in the Texas legislature, so thank you for taking time to be with us. A little bit later this afternoon, we'll have Representative Tracy King from Uvalde joining us, another just intrepid advocate for open space and conservation, so please take the time to thank each of those members. I'm here to represent or to introduce our next keynote speaker. Is this mic cutting in and out? No? I'm just not wearing my hearing aids. Harkey just left a long career with Texas Parks and Wildlife Department in the State Park Division as the Director of Interpretation. And really his life's work and career focus is about moving people along the continuum from a state park visitor to somebody that takes their afternoon to come attend a leadership summit and to become an advocate and to engage. And that's really what we need, and that's what the Hill Country Alliance is really all about, is bringing a diverse group of perspectives and everybody pulling on the oars for positive conservation outcome in our state. And I think whether you're here as a dark sky advocate or a community organizer or just a concerned stakeholder and citizen, there's lessons to be taken from what Kai is here to talk to us about. I'm going off script. It always makes Catherine nervous. So I'm gonna pass the mic over to Kai. Y'all please welcome Mr. Kai Harkey. Thank you.
Hey everybody, get myself settled with the clicker real quick. There we go. I'm glad to be here in a room full, in a virtual audience full of people that are protecting the place that I most care about. I'm Kai Harkey. I grew up in Austin, and the Hill Country is very much critical to my personal path. I want to give you a little background on where I'm coming from, and then I'm going to give you the really deep background on where I'm coming from. So Kai Harkey, I was the Director of Interpretation for Texas State Parks. Anybody ever been to a Texas State Park? Anybody know what's happening this year for Texas State Parks? Yeah, happy 100th anniversary, Texas State Parks. Yeah, clap that up. That's exciting. So as the Director of Interpretation, I'll take a little bit to let you know what that means. But with your relationship to Texas State Parks, I'll give you a hint at some of the things that I and my team were working with. If you make a reservation to go to a Texas State Park, in the workflow, you get prompted for a donation. That's a call to action. You get your email, and you get a video nowadays that welcomes you to your Texas State Park experience, lets you know what to expect. If you look closely, you can see me roasting marshmallows in the back of that video. So from the first point of people that have never been aware of a state park, we have outreach services that invite them, and they come to a park and they see this big entrance sign, and they see trail signs, and they might see vehicle wayfinding signs like you followed on your way to the parking lot today. And we have park interpreters that help you fall in love with these special places by leading family programs, nature programs. That's a little bit of the stuff I was working on. It is my life's passion to help protect beautiful places like the Texas Hill Country. And I'm also a bit of an adventurer. I like personally spending time in nature. Louis, you're out there. 3-time cover boy for Texas Parks and Wildlife Magazine, I'm proud to say. My mom is proud to say. So I've had big adventures. I've been out to Big Bend National Park before, and the far western side of the park, there's the Mesa de Anguila. Very cool canyoneering that me and Russell got to do. We summited the 4 tallest peaks in Texas in one day. It's Guadalupe Mountain and the 3 neighboring peaks. And I don't know if you heard of the Big Bend 100 before, but it's maybe arguably the longest backpacking route in Texas. That's something I founded years ago. As I looked at the map, and I'd spent a lot of time out there, and I thought I can connect the state park and the national park and make a really cool backpacking experience. And thank you, Louis, for cleaning my words up and telling that story so we do that justice. But it all started here, and this is important to think about and talk about. I have been to every single Texas state park, 88, 89 of them. And this was me at my very first Texas state park. Pedernales Falls State Park, just down the road, was number 1 of 89 parks that I visited. And I bring this up, and I'm going to come back to this a couple times. Let me just I should have double-checked. Y'all hear me okay back there? Yeah. This is my parents. My parents invited me out to a park for the first time. They were the people that said, this is a park, this is what we do here, come on out, and planted my seeds of stewardship. In case there's any question whether that cute little boy is in fact this awkward man on stage, let's see, that... And I grew up in Austin, and as a little tiger cub, we would go camping and hiking and spending time in the Texas Hill Country. And something I'd never thought about, but I reflect on today, is I always felt welcome. I always felt like I belonged in the Texas Hill Country. I felt safe out there. Physically, psychologically, I felt safe. I felt welcome. And as time went on, and I had this relationship with nature, I started to find new ways to entertain myself in the outdoors, to find joy in nature. And this is my sister back behind me. In case it's not clear, she did not tie me up by my feet. I tied myself up, and I'm hauling myself up in this mimosa tree. That's my parents' house in Allendale in Austin. They're still living in that house. Certainly, I see this photo, I give this talk a little bit, and I can't help but recognize this connection as well. Pull myself up in trees, lower myself off in remote canyon walls. And this is a photo of me as I grew up a Boy Scout in Austin, at Balcones District, Troop 410. And this is me at Philmont. If you know, that's a big backpacking destination that Boy Scouts go to a lot. I'm about 16 years old here. And so from this time when I'm this little kid hanging myself up on my feet to now I'm 16, and I've spent most of my life going in and out of the outdoors. I felt comfortable, I felt safe, I had fun. And I remember having my backpack on this multi-day trip, and I was kind of alone on the trail. I remember looking up at a feature called Cathedral Rock at Philmont, and this Boy Scout high adventure hiking base. And I remember thinking, this is really cool. And I didn't have the words for it at the time, but I felt small. I felt moved spiritually. I felt a deeper connection to this place. So the outdoors had gone from the very first invitation to feeling welcome and safe, to having fun, to experiencing joy, to now seeing, I appreciate this on a deeper level. This is really special to me. I care about this place. And I don't know if this is a grainy photo, but I'm not moody in this photo. I have braces, so I'm just feeling a little awkward. I don't know if that shows up there, but it is in fact me. And 10 years after that photo was taken, here's me as an instructor with the Texas Outdoor Family Program teaching families to camp for the very first time. This young man is both camping for the first time, catching a fish for the first time. My path took me from that little boy running down the road at Pedernales Falls State Park to helping to share that experience with other people. And I bring this up because I've got a sneaking suspicion that 240 people in this room and online with us have a similar story, have a similar path. I've got the privilege and pleasure of speaking to the greatest concentration of hill country protectors that exist. That is truly an honor. And every one of you has a similar path in some kind of way. And I want you to think about your own path. I'm going to walk through a couple things, and I want you to be thinking about your own path on this. Here you are as stewards, as advocates, as protectors, as champions for the open spaces and the starry skies and the abundant clear waters and the unique character of the Texas Hill Country. But you didn't start there. You had your own path of having been introduced to the outdoors, having been invited, and through that invitation made aware of these special places for the very first time. And you went there, and I'm not going to suggest that it was immediately, but immediately or over a period of weeks or months or years or decades, you felt like you belonged in the Texas Hill Country, in these open spaces that we celebrate across our country. And when I say belong, and just think about that, I'm going to think back to your Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Think about that real quick as we're talking about. So we're talking about, our psychological, our physiological needs are met. We feel safe. Our psychological needs are met. And we feel a sense of belonging. What I hope you feel being in this room right now. And you experience some source of joy. I love that. I was hanging with my dad recently, and the subject of the meaning of life came up. He's 79, he's in good health, but he happened to be in the hospital for a quick second. And he said without thinking twice, it's the expansion of happiness. That's the meaning of life, is the expansion of happiness, or I think a lot of times the spreading of joy. Or Rachel, as you said it so well, the joy we feel, the connection we feel with the universe when we stare up at a dark, starry sky. We feel joy. That's an important piece along our staircase to stewardship. And I bet you could pinpoint what that path looked like. Just moments that you were just blissfully having fun in nature. And I bet you also had that moment, that revelation that this was more than just a fun place for your enjoyment. This place, the Texas Hill Country, Texas State Parks, the ranch land that's been in your family for generations, was a place that you cared deeply about. It was relevant to things that you cared about. I'm going to come back to that. And here you are, the 240 strongest, best advocates for the Texas Hill Country. And your path might have looked similar to that in some kind of way, those components. This to me is important. This is the visitor experience, and visitor is a funny word. Maybe it's the constituent experience, the community members' experience as they get connected to a specific piece of land, with Texas State Parks, with the impact of light pollution on our dark skies. They are moving up this staircase to stewardship as we help them feel more connected to these special resources. A few examples. Here's a quote from, I'm not sure if she's here in the room yet or not. A friend suggested we go to Garner State Park. I never expected that weekend to hug my soul the way it did. This was to be my first adult connection to nature, my happy place. Josie, you out there? Josie Gutierrez. absolute hero of mine. We've been working together for a long time. Yeah. And she'll be here this afternoon. Josie Gutierrez, separate from that first trip when someone invited her to Garner State Park, this is her with Latino Outdoors leading a trip at Garner State Park, introducing, I bet, many of these for their first camping trip in 2016. From that initial invitation to being the advocate, the protector. Another one. My favorite holidays and summer vacations were spent visiting grandparents in Wimberley, splashing around on the Blanco River, searching for fossils, listening to birds. That's Leah. Leah the Explorer. Where are you at, Leah? Leah, and I think the photo was called Granny. Maybe you call her Granny. You and your granny. Introducing you to the outdoors, helping you probably, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but probably helping you feel safe along the banks of the Blanco River. One more for you. I remember my initial terror during some of my first times in a rowboat. It was the patience and calm that both of my parents showed that finally made me feel at ease, and I developed a love for paddling. Specifically a kayaking in the Texas Hill Country. Who do you think that is? That's Catherine. Yeah, give her a clap. Catherine, our ringleader today, has her own personal story, her own personal path, her staircase to stewardship. From that moment, from all those invitations, but also that feeling of safety and that the skills that her parent bestowed on her to help her feel comfortable in the outdoors. That is our visitor experience. I'm going to argue, suggest that is our vision. We want to help people move up that staircase to stewardship. That, I think, is our vision. If this happens in abundance in the state of Texas, I like that vision a lot. I feel real comfortable with the future of the open spaces and starry skies of the Texas Hill Country if we are moving people up this staircase. So let's reflect. That's our vision. Let's reflect for a second on the things within our control to help them move up that path. We are the host in many ways. We are the stewards, we're the protectors. We might very literally be the land managers. And we have the opportunity to invite people to the outdoors. 45%. Anybody know what that is referring to? I bet not. That's kind of obscure. 45%. 45% of Americans do not participate in the outdoors in a given year. Do not recreate outdoors. So, Catherine, you referenced Proposition 14, be on the ballot this fall. Which half of this pie chart would you prefer to show up at the ballot box? To me, I want them all to. I want them to exercise their rights, but I feel much more comfortable about that $1 billion getting passed for public lands in Texas. If that 55% among us that recreate outdoors show up. We can't separate our actions from our comfort in the outdoors. So we are inviting new audiences to be aware of the Texas Hill Country, to be aware of the outdoors. And we create warm welcomes. This is a friend of mine, longtime coworker at Texas State Parks. This is Rodney, and just a quick, you don't, maybe you know, maybe you don't, but looking at this photo, I love this photo of him. It's out on a camping trip. And which of us do you think is a craft beer connoisseur? It's Rodney. Rodney is a craft beer connoisseur. Which of us do you think has visited more Texas State Parks? That's a trick question, because you know that I visited all of them. Rodney has as well. So we're tied on that one. Here's another question. Maybe y'all don't know the answer to this. Which of our parents felt more comfortable going to a Texas State Park growing up? Here's one more. Which of our grandparents were allowed to go to Texas State Park growing up? So I don't know if y'all know, this is Rodney Franklin. He's a longtime mentor of mine. He's the director of Texas State Park, still there, doing exceptional work. Y'all might know absolutely three of my conservation heroes. Y'all know George Bristol, very great advocate for public lands in Texas and funding, and Carter Smith as well, former executive director of Texas Parks and Wildlife Department. And I bring this up to reference, and I asked Rodney about sharing this message, to talk about barriers a little bit. And I remember almost 10 years ago now with Jennifer Bristol, George's daughter, who's a huge Texas conservation advocate, sitting on a panel with her at the National Children and Nature Network Conference. And we were on a panel, we're talking about diversity and equity and inclusion in the outdoors. And the question came up, what barriers have you experienced in your conservation career? And the microphone started on the far end and worked its way down. And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking about that question a lot. And the microphone's passed to me. And I just simply said, none. I am a white, middle-class male in a society that was largely developed by white men. And I have not experienced barriers to my conservation career. I've had a lot of welcomes into nature. I've had a lot of welcomes into the conservation career as a whole. And I bring this up to think about, wait, what does that mean, warm welcomes? And, you know, when we talk about diversity in the outdoors, inclusion, equity, privilege, unconscious bias, man, there's a lot of words behind that can, I think at times, complicate a message. We are a room full of Texans, and Texans believe in Texas hospitality. Yes? And so when I say warm welcomes, I think about no matter who you are, no matter how different your background and your lifestyle is, I want you to feel like you belong in the outdoors. That's to me, like that's the end of the message. And so we talk about that specifically when I say warm welcome. Lee, I'm going to draw attention to the laptop is saying low battery. I'm not sure if we've got a cord up here. Warm welcomes, inclusion, the act of being inclusive, the act of exhibiting Texas hospitality, that is an action, and belonging is the outcome of that. That's something all of us have in our control, is to help people feel welcome and feel like they belong in the outdoors. So, joy. As we work to spread joy, I think about how much joy I personally experienced at Enchanted Rock. I'm a rock climber. I've had a lot of good times out there. And this is a tough one to think about, but I want you to think about which one would you rather protect? This? Or that? And that's a tough one. And let me recognize the private landowners in this room that do exceptional work to conserve the wild places of the Texas Hill Country. And as a whole, y'all know that our staircase to stewardship might peter out if we do not have access to the outdoors. If we can't personally experience that joy that we all felt, our staircase might stop right there. Thank you, Leah. Okay, a quick participatory piece, if y'all don't mind. I want you to please, for those of y'all that can, reach down and grab the biggest pink rock you can find at your feet. And this is maybe a metaphor for conservation. There's a room full of folks on concrete. Maybe pass them a rock if you can. I cheated. I brought mine up with me. We got it? Hang with me for a second for a quick participatory piece of this. I want you to say these out loud with the people around you. Introduce yourself if you haven't already. And say out loud, what are things you notice? Put on your best detective hat And what are things that you notice about this rock? Y'all are the outdoorsy type. If you don't mind pouring a little bit of water on your rock, see how that might change the way your rock looks and maybe what you notice about this rock. If y'all don't have a rock, raise your hand and your neighbors will pass you one. What are things you notice? This might be a pebble that has never been between the two fingers of a human, for all we know. And you were the first one noticing that. You are a pioneer and an explorer studying this rock. What do you notice? And I want you to think now, what do you wonder? If you could ask this rock a question, what would you ask it? What are you wondering about this rock? I wondered where it comes from. I wonder its relationship to Enchanted Rock. I wonder when it was underground as molten rock, did molecules here pass by the molecules that are now on Enchanted Rock? And last one for me, please. What does it remind you of? What is this rock, the questions you ask, the things you notice, what does it remind you of? Anybody know the poet Mary Oliver? Y'all are a room full of folks that would absolutely love her work. She's got a poem, it goes something like this, the 3 simple rules for living. Pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. I love that. I love that. And what you're doing right now is you're paying attention to a natural resource of the Texas Hill Country. I hope and I think that you might be astonished, and maybe you're telling about it to the people around you. I bring this up specifically to talk about the practice of interpretation, which if I could have a conversation with the person who invented that word, a profession that is professional communicators and storytellers, to pick a word that's so confusing. This has nothing to do with language translation. I think of it more as interpretation changes hearts and minds. Interpretation builds appreciation. It is not education exactly. I'm not up here telling you facts about this rock, but together we're going through some exercises. We're taking some time to pay attention and be astonished. And tell me if I'm wrong, but I'd guess that you'd never look at this exact rock exactly the same way as you might have 10 minutes ago. And that's a bit about what interpretation does. And we do that through our signs and nature center exhibits and our storytelling and our advocacy. We help people change their hearts and change their minds by very intentional communication and reflection and paying attention. I'm going to tuck this one away. And now something this room knows, I think, a lot better than I do. You have helped them up their staircase to stewardship. And at the right moment, you give your audience a call to action. You ask for their help. You ask for their voice. You ask for their time, to their resources, and ask them to join us in protecting the open spaces and starry skies and unique character of the Texas Hill Country. If this is our vision up here on the left side, this is our action. This is our map. The map of how we are perpetuating a conservation movement that protects the Texas Hill Country that we all love so much and want to steward. So, So what? So what? The thing that gets me excited, that's a lot of work. That's a lot of work, a lot of people out there that we want to try to help. The thing that gets me excited is every one of you in this room could probably point out one or two people that were critical to your personal path. And right now, and last week, and this weekend, you are extending that invitation to the next Catherine Romans. You are helping the next Leah Kudabag feel welcome in the outdoors. You are helping the next Josie Gutierrez to fall in love and have her soul hugged by the wild places in Texas Hill Country. That's what gets me excited. It is that this alliance, this room in 20 years from now, 20 years after the founding of the Hill Country Alliance, 20 years from now, this room will be full of stewards and advocates for the Texas Hill Country because of the work that you are doing right now. That's what gives me faith. That's what helps me wake up in the morning and help parks. As George Bristlewick said once, I wake up every morning and know I'm going to help some park do some good. And this room is collectively inviting the next generation to fall in love with the Texas Hill Country and to take action. And that is the beauty, Catherine, to me, of the Hill Country Alliance. Alliance, working together in this beautiful mosaic, this beautiful tapestry of our work, each of us focused on different audiences or different resources or different steps along the staircase to stewardship to protect the Texas Hill Country. That gives me chills. And I want to thank you in all the work you do to protect the place that I am most attached to. And I also just think about sometimes, what would Enchanted Rock or the Blanca River, or any of these special natural and cultural recreational resources out there in the Texas country, what might they say to you if they could express their gratitude? They can't, so let me do that instead. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing to invite that next generation to fall in love with the Texas Hill Country and act. I've got great confidence in the future of the Texas Hill Country because of the people in this room. I thank y'all so much. Catherine, Leah, thank you for the invitation to be out here. I think I'm going to stay up for a couple minutes with any questions, if you have it, and that's more information on me. Thank you, Leah. Thank you, Catherine.
Thank you for that wonderful presentation. So I am Judge Rubio from Real County, and we neighbor Garner State Park. And so I don't really have a question. I just have a kind of a fun fact. So my esteemed colleague here, Commissioner Gray, she's a pioneer family from Real and Uvalde County, and her family owned part of Garner State Park that exists today. And so she grew up running around all that beautiful area as a child, gathering rocks and everything. And so I'm thankful for her pioneer family and the vision and selling property to expand Garner State Park.
Yeah, big round of applause there. Thank you, Judge, for sharing that. Thank you, Commissioner. I like to believe that no park exists without interpretation from some form. Your family recognized the value of it, loved that place, and wanted to share it and protect it. That's a great example. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Sydney, and my question for you is I definitely invite a lot of people to hang out in the Hill Country because I'm from Texas and I think it's beautiful, and I have friends from everywhere. So you having more experience, how do you navigate when people aren't really educated and sometimes being new to being in that space, they throw trash or just aren't really good stewards? It's hard for me to balance sometimes because it makes me mad, but I want them to be included. So do you have any advice?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Gosh, I bet there's 239 different great perspectives on that around you. I think what I want to say is I tap into the moments in my life that I didn't understand those nuances, right? I think a lot about throwing orange peels or throwing banana peels on the ground. Like, it's natural, it's organic, right? And you and I understand the nuance of, well, it's not native there, it's not going to decompose on the surface and so on. There's absolutely, I can pinpoint times in my life that I did not understand that nuance. So it's just, to me, part of it is empathizing with those in their learning curve along their staircase to stewardship. And secondly, the thing I think about is we talk about this. I'm not a law enforcement officer, but I've worked alongside many conservation law enforcement officers. And we talk about the concept of the authority of the resource. And it's the difference between saying, hey, you can't do that. That's not allowed here. The authority of the badge, the authority of the organization, versus the authority of the resource, standing shoulder to shoulder with that person and reflecting on why we don't do that. And letting the resource, the natural resource, and the desire to want to protect it be what is explained in the rules. I hope that is a thing. I'm happy to talk with you more about that. I appreciate the question.
Hello. Does this work? Hey, Kai.
Hey, Glenda.
I'm Glenda Beasley with Marketing Mileage, and I worked with Kai at Parks and Wildlife. I had the pleasure. And I'm very aware of the multicultural aspect of marketing and getting all the different communities to engage. What, in your consultancy, are you providing to those organizations to make the park feel more welcoming to a diverse group? I mean, it's not. I mean, are you promoting multilingual signage, or does the interpretive experience differ? Do we worry about garbage cans for big families? I mean, how are you tackling that?
Yeah, Glenda, thank you for the question. Again, so many great perspectives in this room that in so many ways would be more authorities to speak on that. What I want to share in general, principles that I believe in are, one, prioritize it. We want the visitors to our parks or the constituents of the Texas Hill Country to reflect the diversity of our communities. So one, just prioritize it, understand who your visitors are or who your constituents are, and work to make sure that they reflect the community. So prioritize it, work to reflect, address the gap there. And I will just say that, guys, I mean, that's a whole workshop on its own, but I think you can never go wrong by going in with an authentic desire to listen, to understand what barriers exist, and a service mindset of how can we work together to remove those barriers and make sure that you feel welcome and you feel like you belong. Those are a couple of things that come to mind. Again, a great question, Glenda. Appreciate it. Azalea.
Can you hear me? Okay. I will also say Latino Outdoors, we are piloting the Centennial Pass.
Yes.
And so that goes out to a lot of community groups. And so that allows up to 20 families into a state park for free. So that's also one way that Texas Parks and Wildlife is building that access to a lot of different communities. But I was going to also say, I love that you touched on Philmont, because I worked at Philmont at Dan Beard back in summer of 2016. And it was my first experience into like the wilderness, into mountains, and that's really what started and like cultivated into like me wanting to be a land steward. But I wanted to kind of ask if you could kind of talk about the interpretation side of what is being, I guess, talked about or driven out when it comes to talking about a lot of ancestral lands that we're on without necessarily sharing somebody's story for them, but kind of trying to do that respectfully, because I know it kind of is a complex thing, as we don't want to share other people's stories, but at the same time, we kind of want to acknowledge the original stewards of the land. But if you can kind of just talk about any kind of conversations or work that's going on behind that.
Yeah, great question, Azalea. Thank you for it. Again, I'm no longer with Texas Parks and Wildlife, but I actually work for the Parks and Wildlife Foundation part-time right now, and I keep very close friends with that group. And so some things in general is you think about where interpretive signage, right, the signage that's storytelling in our parks, think about the different chapters in the U.S. history where those were developed. And you think about how outdated a lot of the understanding, the nuance, and the storytelling is of those decades where those signs or those historical markers came out. So one, I just encourage anybody to look at your signage in your parks with fresh eyes, with 2023 eyes, and understand. I mean, there's some things that are really embarrassing. But when we look at them with fresh eyes, and I happened to be catching up with last night with some of the staff from Waco Tanks State Historic Site at El Paso. Very, very long, rich human history in that space. And in so many ways, to me, leading the way for public land managers and how they work to address to work with tribal governments to hear the right stories. And so just in general, I mean, it's making sure we are having those conversations, identifying the right points of context. I'm not telling you this, you know this better than I do. But those are some of the things happening within Texas Parks and Wildlife. And I know there's a lot of advocates that are making context that are, at times at Caddo, at Mission Tejas State Parks, brought in a PhD student that was familiar with the Caddoan language and translated the welcome signage into Caddo, English, Spanish, Caddo. So those are some of the efforts. We want more resources in general to go towards that. I'm proud of the directions things have gone, but there's work to be done. But those are a couple of things that stand out offhand.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cecilia. Hey, thanks, y'all. I appreciate so much being here. Thank you for